Hollywood wants you to believe that if the ice caps melt, Mount Everest becomes a snorkeling destination and Kevin Costner grows gills. Let me shatter that image right now. If every single ounce of ice on this planet melted, Antarctica, Greenland, the glaciers in the Alps, the sea level would rise by approximately 70 metres. That is about 230 feet. That is catastrophic. It drowns Florida, London, and the entire eastern seaboard. But it does not cover the Earth. The continents remain. The mountains remain. You do not need a trimaran. You need a moving van. But here is the twist. You don't need 70 metres of water to end civilization as you know it. You only need 2. Welcome to the Survival Curriculum. I'm Tom, and today we are looking at the physics of the flood. We are going to separate the movie magic from the hard glaciology models to understand the single greatest slow-motion threat to your survival: the encroaching ocean. Most people are preparing for a sudden collapse, an EMP or a nuke. But the ocean plays the long game. It attacks your wallet before it attacks your home. It poisons your water before it drowns your lawn. If you want to understand how to position yourself for the next 30 years of geophysical reality, you need to lock in now. We aren't just talking about sandbags. We are talking about the complete redrawing of the economic map. Secure your spot in this briefing, because by the time the water is at your door, it's too late to learn how to swim. Picture this. It is a timeline where humanity burned every lump of coal and every drop of oil. The year is indeterminate, perhaps 1,000 years from now. The temperature is sweltering, tropical at the poles. You are standing on what used to be the observation deck of the Empire State Building. You look down. The streets of Manhattan are gone. The water laps against the 30th floor. To the west, the Appalachian Mountains are an island chain. To the south, Florida is a memory, a submerged limestone reef. But if you turn and look inland, towards the Midwest, you see land. Vast, green, humid land. This is the 70-metre line. It is the absolute ceiling of the Earth's hydrological cycle. It is a destroyed world, yes, but it is not a water world. Survivors aren't fighting on jet skis. They are farming on the high plateaus of Missouri. When people visualize sea level rise, they visualize Noah's Ark. I see this in the comments all the time. Tom, I'm buying a boat. I'm learning to fish. This is the failed reaction. You are preparing for a total inundation that physics simply does not support. If you spend your limited resources building a flotilla because you think the Rockies will be underwater, you are wasting capital that should be spent on land acquisition. The panic instinct is to assume binary outcomes. Either the world is fine, or the world is underwater. The reality is much harder to process. The reality is a map that looks mostly the same, but with all the valuable bits, the ports, the refineries, the coastal cities, shaved off. Preparing for Waterworld is easy. It's a fantasy. Preparing for a world with 20% less livable land and 50% less GDP, that is the hard work. Let's do the inventory math. This is critical for your mental model. We have 3 main reservoirs of ice. First, the mountain glaciers, the Rockies, the Alps, the Himalayas. If they all go, you get maybe half a metre. Meaningless on a global scale, though devastating locally for fresh water. Second, the Greenland ice sheet. This is the big block of ice in the north. It holds about 7 metres of global sea level rise. That is 23 feet. That takes out London and Miami. Third, the big one, Antarctica. The east and west Antarctic sheets hold about 58 to 63 metres. Combined with Greenland, that gets us to that 70-metre figure. But here is the constraint. Floating ice, like the North Pole sea ice, contributes 0 to sea level rise. It is already displacing its own weight. This is Archimedes' principle. If your whiskey on the rocks melts, the glass doesn't overflow. So, ignore the headlines about Arctic sea ice melting, drowning the world. That affects weather, sure, but it doesn't raise the tide. The threat comes strictly from the ice sitting on land. Here's the complication that catches preppers off guard. The 70-metre melt takes thousands of years. It is thermodynamically impossible to melt that much ice in a human lifetime. It requires too much energy. However, that doesn't mean you are safe. The danger isn't the final destination, it's the rate of change. We are looking at a likely rise of 0.5 to 1.5 metres this century. That sounds small. Oh, Tom, that's just waist deep. But consider storm surges. A 1 metre baseline rise turns a 10-year storm into a monthly event. It turns a 100-year hurricane flood into a generic Tuesday. You don't need to be permanently underwater to be uninhabitable. You just need to flood often enough that the mould never dries. The insurance company cancels your policy and the bank forecloses. The water doesn't kill you, the economic eviction does. Let's zoom in to the near future. It's 2045. You live in a coastal suburb, maybe 3 miles inland. The sky is blue, there isn't a cloud in sight. No rain for weeks. You walk out to your car to go to work, and the tyres are submerged in 6 inches of water. It's bubbling up through the storm drains like a backed-up toilet. This is the sunny day flood. The high tide, amplified by that fraction of a metre of sea level rise and a concurrent supermoon, has pushed the ocean backwards up the drainage pipes. You wade through it. It's salt water. It touches the undercarriage of your truck. By next week, the brake lines are corroded. The city pumps are running full bore, burning diesel, but they can't push the ocean back into the ocean. This isn't a disaster movie scene with a tidal wave. It's a boring, wet, salty grind that destroys your vehicle, rots your infrastructure, and makes your commute impossible. All while the sun is shining. How do people react to sunny day flooding? They normalise it. I call this the wet socks syndrome. Residents in places like Miami or Norfolk already do this. They check the tide charts like they check the traffic. They park on the higher spots of the driveway. They wear rubber boots to the bus stop. They treat an existential threat as a nuisance. This is a fatal survival error. By the time you accept salt water on your street as normal, your property value is effectively 0. You are trapping yourself in an asset that you cannot sell. The smart money leaves when the water touches the curb for the first time. The victims stay until the water touches the living room. Do not normalize the anomaly. If the ocean is in the street, the clock has run out. Let's talk about the specific logistics of saltwater intrusion. Salt is the enemy of civilization. We build with steel-reinforced concrete. When salt water penetrates concrete, it reaches the steel rebar. The steel rusts. Rust expands, occupying more volume than the original iron. This internal pressure cracks the concrete from the inside out. This is concrete cancer. In a high sea level scenario, the foundations of buildings, bridges, and roads in the flood zone begin to rot invisibly. Furthermore, most coastal cities rely on gravity for sewage. You flush, it flows down to a treatment plant. If the sea level rises above the outflow pipes, the gravity system fails. Sewage backs up. To fix this, you need massive, energy-intensive pumping stations. So, The logistics of staying in a zone with just 1 metre of rise involves constant generator maintenance, corrosion control, and living in a biological hazard zone. It is expensive, it is smelly, and it is relentless. Here is the complication that almost no one discusses until they turn on the tap and taste brine. Freshwater floats on top of saltwater in underground aquifers. As sea levels rise, the hydraulic pressure of the ocean increases, pushing that saltwater wedge further inland, underneath the land. This is saltwater intrusion. Long before your house floods, your well water becomes undrinkable. Municipal supplies in coastal cities will face this crisis. Reverse osmosis desalination is possible, but it is incredibly energy hungry. If the grid is wobbly, which it will be, you cannot rely on desal. So, you might have a dry house on a hill 5 miles from the coast, but if your aquifer gets salted, you have zero water security. You are living in a desert surrounded by water. Check the hydrogeological maps of your area. If the saltwater wedge is moving in, you need to be moving out. Shift gears. You live 1,000 miles inland, Kansas. You think you are safe. Sea level rise is a coastal problem, right? Wrong. It is a Tuesday in November. You go to the hardware store for lumber. Empty. You go to the pharmacy for antibiotics. Back-ordered. You check Amazon. Currently unavailable. There was no storm in Kansas, but 3 days ago, a king tide combined with a storm surge flooded the port of Los Angeles and the port of Houston simultaneously. The cranes are fine, but the electrical substations powering the offloading gantries are shorted out. The trucks can't get into the terminal because the access roads are washed out. The global supply chain has just suffered a stroke. You are high and dry, but your lifestyle is drowning because the nodes that feed your economy are built at sea level. The silence in the store aisles is the sound of a distant ocean claiming your logistics. When the inland supply shock hits, the reaction is predictable: panic buying. But because the cause is distant and abstract, problems at the port, people don't know when it will end. They strip the shelves of everything. This exacerbates the shortage. We saw a preview of this in 2020, but a sea level driven disruption is different. It isn't a virus that goes away, it's infrastructure that has to be rebuilt or elevated. That takes years. The masses will hoard toilet paper when they should be hoarding critical spare parts and medications. They react to the symptom, empty shelves, rather than the cause, systemic coastal failure. If you understand that the bottleneck is the port, you know that the shortage will last for months. You adjust your consumption immediately, while everyone else is just angry at the store manager. Modern civilization runs on just-in-time delivery. We don't have warehouses anymore. We have inventory in motion on ships and trucks. 90% of global trade moves by sea. And where are the ports? By definition, at sea level. A rise of just 1 metre threatens the viability of most major cargo terminals. They have to raise the docks, raise the cranes, and raise the rail yards. This costs trillions. In the transition period, which is where we will live for the rest of our lives, we will see chronic, rolling disruptions. The logistics you need to master involve deep pantry storage. You cannot rely on the global stream of goods. You need to be the warehouse. If you import critical medication or specific tech components for your business from overseas, you are vulnerable. The survival strategy here is supply chain shortening. Source local, build local, store deep. If it has to cross an ocean to get to you, assume it won't arrive. It gets worse. Look at a map of oil refineries. The Gulf Coast of the US, Rotterdam in Europe, Singapore, they are all clustered on the coast for easy tanker access. They are sitting ducks for sea level rise and storm surge. When these refineries flood, They don't just stop producing fuel, they leak toxic sludge and catch fire. But the immediate impact on you is the fuel price. A major hurricane hitting a sea-level stressed refinery complex can spike gas prices by 300% overnight. If you are inland, relying on a generator for your power outages, can you afford diesel at $20 a gallon? The complication is that sea level rise attacks the energy sector first. Your inland survival retreat is useless if you can't afford the fuel to get there or power it. This is why renewable redundancy, solar, wind, hydro, isn't just a green thing, it's a strategic necessity against coastal refinery collapse. The year is 2060. The news is playing a loop of Bangladesh and Vietnam. The Mekong Delta has finally salted over completely. Rice production has collapsed. Tens of millions of people are on the move. But it's not just there. It's southern Florida. It's the Outer Banks. It's New Orleans. We are seeing the Great Retreat. Caravans of U-Hauls are heading north and inland. The motels in the Appalachians are full. The campgrounds are shanty towns. You are a homeowner in a safe zone like Tennessee or Colorado. Suddenly, your population doubles. The traffic is gridlocked. The local grocery stores are overwhelmed. The schools are running 3 shifts. You didn't flood, but the flood came to you in the form of desperate, displaced humanity. The social fabric stretches and tears. Crime spikes, not out of malice, but out of desperation. This is the demographic consequence of the rising tide. How do inland communities react to climate refugees? Historically, not well. We see the drawbridge effect. Communities try to close themselves off. Zoning laws become weaponized. Locals-only policies emerge informally. If you are the newcomer, even if you are a citizen from the same country, you are viewed as a resource competitor. If you are the local, you feel under siege. The failed reaction is to assume that your property rights will be respected in a crisis of this magnitude. When millions need shelter, empty vacation homes and spare rooms get requisitioned, either by the government or by squatters. The social contract is fragile. If you are planning to bug out to a small town, get there now. Integrate now. Be a local before the rush starts. If you arrive with the wave, you are just another mouth to feed. So, where do you go? We need to look at the intersection of elevation and latitude. Obviously, you want altitude. 50 metres above sea level is a safe buffer for the next 1,000 years. But you also need to consider the climate shift that is melting the ice in the first place. A safe elevation in a region that becomes too hot for agriculture is a death trap. You are looking for the climate Goldilocks zone. In the US, this often points to the Great Lakes region, the Northern Rockies, or parts of the Northeast inland. You want freshwater independence, upland sources that won't get salted. You want a growing season that is lengthening, not scorching. And crucially, you want distance from the fall line, the geological boundary where the coastal plain meets the Piedmont. Stay above the fall line. The logistics of relocation are cheaper today than they will be tomorrow. Real estate in these safe zones is the most undervalued asset on the planet right now. Here is the financial complication that will precede the physical migration: the death of insurance. Insurance companies are the best climate modelers in the world. They have skin in the game. We are already seeing them pull out of Florida and California. When you cannot insure a home, you cannot get a mortgage. When you cannot get a mortgage, the real estate market freezes. Property values in coastal zones won't slowly decline. They will gap down to zero overnight when the major insurers exit the market entirely. You might plan to sell your coastal home in 10 years to fund your retreat, but if the market collapses in 5 years because insurers flee, your equity is gone. You are trapped. The Waterworld scenario for you is being stuck in a dying house you can't sell, watching the water rise, with zero net worth. Get your equity onto high ground while the market is still in denial. Let's look at the worst-case scenario for this century. The wild card. It's called the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica, the Doomsday Glacier. It acts as a cork, holding back a massive amount of ice. In this narrative, the floating ice shelf bracing Thwaites shatters unexpectedly in 2035. The cork pops. The flow of ice into the ocean accelerates dramatically. Instead of millimetres per year, we start seeing centimetres. The sea level forecast for 2100 jumps from 1 metre to 2 or 3. Every seawall currently being built is instantly obsolete. Every adaptation plan is garbage. The global panic is immediate. Coastal cities realise they don't have 50 years, they have 15. The evacuation isn't orderly, it's a stampede. This is the high-end scenario in the IPCC reports. It's low probability, but high impact. It changes the timeline from grandkids' problem to your problem. How do governments react to the threat of rapid rise? They try to build their way out of it. The Mose Project in Venice, the Big U in New York, massive seawalls and gates. The reaction is engineering hubris. We think we can fight the Atlantic Ocean with concrete. For a while, it works, but walls create a false sense of security. People keep building behind them, increasing the density in the danger zone. Then the water overtops the wall, or the pumps fail, or the water comes up through the ground beneath the wall. When a seawall fails, the disaster is infinitely worse than if the wall hadn't been there, because the water comes in as a tidal bore and gets trapped. Don't bet your life on a government contract and a pile of concrete. The ocean always wins the siege. If we enter a phase of rapid, unpredictable rise, the only viable logistical strategy is mobility. The era of the 30-year mortgage on a fixed piece of land is ending for coastal zones. We might see a return to nomadic adaptation. Tiny homes on wheels, container architecture that can be craned onto a truck, floating neighbourhoods that rise with the tide. This sounds sci-fi, but the logistics are sound. If you don't own the land, you don't lose the equity when the land floods. You own the structure, and you move it. This requires a complete rethink of home. It means investing in portable assets, skills, tools, mobile power systems, portable shelter, rather than fixed real estate. In a fluid world, you must be fluid. If you are anchored to the ground, you drown. A psychological complication of the high-end scenario is the erasure of culture. Human history is coastal. Rome, Alexandria, London, New York, Shanghai. These are the archives of our species. As they go under, we lose more than buildings. We lose our heritage. The psychological toll of watching the Statue of Liberty or the Sydney Opera House become hazards to navigation is profound. It triggers a collective grief, a nihilism. Why build anything if the water is just going to take it? This apathy is dangerous. Survival requires hope. It requires a belief in the future. You have to guard your mind against the despair of the map. You preserve what you can, your family history, your knowledge, your culture, and you carry it uphill. We are not the first humans to migrate away from rising water. Our ancestors did it at the end of the last ice age. We can do it again. Let's take the longest view. The year 2300. The ice sheets have stabilised. The sea is 10 metres higher. The map of the world has been redrawn. Florida is an archipelago of islands, the high ridges. The Central Valley of California is an inland sea. The Amazon is a massive gulf. But humanity is still here. We have adapted. We live in dense vertical cities on the high ground, connected by high-speed hydrofoils. The coastlines are wild, abandoned zones where salvage crews dive into the ruins of the old world to recover steel and copper. It is a harsh world, but a stable one. The panic is over. The adjustment is complete. This narrative is important because it proves there is a future. It's not extinction, it's transition. Your genetic line can exist in this future, but only if you navigate the bottleneck of the 21st century successfully. Right now, we are in the denial phase. Politicians argue about whether the water is rising. Real estate developers pretend the coastline is static. This denial wastes time. The survivors of the future will be the descendants of those who accepted the reality early. There is a peace in acceptance. Once you accept that the coastline is moving, you stop fighting it. You stop worrying about your beach house value and start investing in timberland in the mountains. You stop voting for seawalls and start voting for resettlement aid. The reaction you want to cultivate in yourself is radical realism. Look at the topography. Look at the ice melt data. Trust the physics. Ignore the politics. Physics doesn't care about your opinion. If you are building for a future of rising seas, you need to build differently. Current construction is disposable. Stick frame houses meant to last 50 years. We need to return to masonry, to stone, to earth-sheltered designs on high ground. We need to build cisterns for water capture, not just rely on city pipes. We need to plant orchards that take 10 years to fruit. This is multi-generational logistics. You are not prepping for next week. You are setting up a homestead that can support your grandchildren. This means buying land that has its own water source, its own woodlot, and good soil, well above the 70-meter danger line just to be absolutely sure. It means teaching your kids skills, agriculture, mechanics, medicine, not just how to code. Coding is great, but you can't eat code when the supply chain breaks. The ultimate survival logistic is a resilient family culture rooted in a resilient location. So, will the ice caps cover the Earth? No. Kevin Costner was wrong. But the truth is more challenging. We are facing a slow, grinding siege of our coastal civilization. The water will take the ports, the refineries, and the deltas. It will squeeze us into a smaller, hotter world. But this isn't the end of the story. It's a test. It's a test of adaptability. The dinosaur dies because it cannot move. The human survives because we can predict, plan, and relocate. The water world isn't a movie, it's a filter. It filters out the rigid, the denialists, and the unprepared. It selects for the flexible, the realists, and the foresightful. The water is rising, but so is our capacity to adapt, if we choose to see the threat clearly. But remember this, the water is just one variable. As the coasts retreat, the inland pressures rise. The next great challenge won't be the water itself. It will be the 8 billion people fighting for the high ground. The heat, the drought, and the migration are all connected. The map is changing, and the borders are hardening. If you think learning about sea level rise is enough, you are missing the second half of the equation. You need to understand what happens when the lights go out in the crowded lifeboat. We are going to cover the dynamics of that inland conflict, the resource wars, in the very next briefing. It is the necessary companion to this flooding analysis. If you want to survive the migration, you need to be in that briefing. Secure your spot now. Don't let the algorithm decide if you see it. Click the notification bell. The water is slow, but the collapse happens fast. Be ready.